All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the stream. I hope everybody is doing well tonight. Singy, good to see you over there on the YouTube side. Hello. So tonight we're going to pick up where we left off last week. I did manage to get a little bit of work done off stream just to kind of push things forward a little bit. So we're going to talk about that. And then we are going to proceed with some of our other asset types and getting some of that stuff straightened out. So that we can move on to some of the resource work that we need to do. And also, I'm thinking we're actually going to wind up deleting a bunch more code tonight, which is going to be awesome. So that is all good stuff. With that, let me just take a quick second to thank the supporters of the channel, beginning with our elite partner, Javier Lazaran. That's the highest tier of subscription over there on Patreon. Followed by our partners, Gabroli's Inc. and Matt Osgard, who are the next tier of subscription over on Patreon and YouTube memberships. Followed by all the names you see here listed on the screen. They are a combination of other tiers of support over on YouTube memberships, Patreon, as well as Twitch subscriptions. So thank you all very much for your support. That support goes to helping me cover the costs of running this channel. Things like hosting fees, software licenses, eventually asset licenses, things like that. So it is very much appreciated. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't say a big thank you to all of the viewers, whether you're joining us here on the Twitch side or the YouTube side live, or if you're just watching the VOD after the fact. Without you guys, obviously this channel would not exist, nor would this project. So I really appreciate you guys being here. It means a lot to me that you guys are here and following along, and hopefully you guys get something out of it. So, all right. So where we left off on the last stream was we were talking about, we were essentially working our way through our texture system updates. And that is largely finished at this point. So I basically went through and just tied all of the texture system calls out to get image assets. I tied all of those things to our new logic, our new interface for our asset system. So if we want to just take a quick look at that, we have quite a bit new stuff added, and actually I haven't checked in all of it. Before we had binary assets and image assets, essentially. And so we have text assets. So that's just, literally reading a text file and passing that through. I believe we did talk about bitmap fonts and system fonts. So those are there. I did static mesh assets offline. I also did height map terrain assets. So this is going to be reworked when we rework our terrains. But for now, I just ported over the existing logic to use the new method of loading a height map terrain. And then I went ahead and completed all the changes needed for material assets, including updating the material system to use that. And updating the material system to use textures. So that's more or less a lot of the stuff we've already kind of seen on stream. We just kind of continued doing a lot of that stuff offline. And then audio assets have been done as well. So the thing that we're working on right now that we were taking a look at was the scene. And so we basically need to handle scene assets. And that was actually what I had pulled up here was the scene serializer. And I believe I actually started working on the C file. I've been away from it now for a little bit. So yeah. So I started the implementation here, and then I'll obviously just copy that over to the header file side once we get to that point. So scene files, I've been a little bit on the fence about this, right? Because this is loading a scene asset is literally just loading you can think of it as the configuration for a scene. So it's not actually loading the scene. It's loading all of the content that tells our sort of scene what needs to be loaded, what static meshes need to be loaded, skyboxes, things of that nature. So that is kind of what this is. I'm kind of tempted to just do a synchronous version of this only and not an asynchronous version. So we'll come back to that in just a second. Oculus, raiding with a party of 28. Wow. Thank you so much for the raid. What did you get up to on stream? Welcome, raiders. For anybody that's here, if you're not following Odd Oculus, you should definitely do it. He's building an incredible looking game in Unreal Engine. And I'm really liking the way it's coming along. I lurk in your stream a lot. I don't interact, unfortunately, because usually I'm working on something else. But yeah, I do lurk in your stream quite a bit. Got a little warrior guy with the sword and shield. Awesome. So you're making good progress there. Yeah, last time oh, you got the new animation system in. Okay, that was what I think I saw you working on the last time. I don't think you completed it last time I saw your stream, but yeah. Okay, that's really awesome. Welcome, raiders. All right, so let me... you made huge progress offline. Yeah, that was basically what I was just kind of going over here. Sometimes that's the way it goes, right? So I'll briefly touch on what we're doing on this channel, and then I'll kind of catch up to where we are right now. So what we're working on is something called the Kohi game engine, and I will drop a link in chat here for you guys. That will take you to this website, which is sort of the central hub for the whole project. So what this is it's a game engine built in C, using Vulkan as its initial rendering backend, completely from scratch. So we build everything within the runtime, at least, is built completely from scratch. We do have a couple of exceptions for asset imports, but we have our own asset formats and things like that. So I'll kind of touch on that in just a second. But this is designed to be a sort of educational series on a way to build a game engine. It is not the only way to build a game engine. It is not even necessarily always the right way to build a game engine. We do a lot of exploration and experimentation on this channel. And so we try things. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. And either way, we do a deep dive as to why that is. But it started off as a tutorial series, actually, and it was kind of the Vulkan game engine series. But we quickly outgrew that format, as most game engines would, because they're kind of a large project, right? We're at about 77,000 lines of code, I think. And so we've changed formats, tried a bunch of different things on the channel. Eventually, we landed on this live streaming format, which seems to work really well. And so now we live stream on YouTube and Twitch. We simulcast to both. So the engine itself, as I mentioned, is written in C using Vulkan as our initial rendering backend. I say initial rendering backend because we have plans to support Metal and Direct 3D at a minimum, with the potential for others. The project itself is completely free and open source, so it is available on GitHub, and it is Apache 2.0 license, which means that you can use this for whatever you want, whether that's personal or commercial, it does not matter. All that I ask is that you say that you used it if you did. So what that also means is that this will never be paywalled. It will never have any sort of licensing fees or royalty fees or any of that kind of stuff. It'll always be free and open source. The games I create with it might not necessarily be, but the engine itself is. So that's available there. It is cross-platform. It's available on Windows, Linux, and macOS desktop environments. We do have other platforms planned for the future, mobile platforms, things of that nature. And so there's just a couple of other links on here. Obviously, YouTube and Twitch again, our Discord server, a link to the GitHub, excuse me, the GitHub, and a Patreon link. I don't have any sponsors or anything like that. It's just, the viewers. So, like I said, I don't, this is an educational thing. I don't paywall anything on here. And, I believe this stuff should be free. And so, I don't paywall anything. This kind of stuff is totally optional. All right. So what we are doing is we are actually in the process of starting to develop our first game with this engine. That being said, it is a brand new engine. So we are going to have to go back and forth between engine dev and game dev as we work the kinks out of the engine. One of those kinks that we are working out right now has to do with the asset system. The asset system that we had was good on paper, right? But it wound up being a little bit too complicated for everyday use. So we're making a large effort to simplify the API behind that, and then from there we are expanding that to all the systems that rely on it, and we are in the process actually removing a lot of code and a lot of complexity. So that's kind of where we stand on the project as it is. Let's see. Thank you for the follow. Appreciate that. Are we developing the flying carpet first? Yeah. So the flying carpet, I did write that down actually as a meme. As a meme sort of inside joke. I do have, let me pull that up. I think I put it in here. Let me pull up the Google Doc. Yes, we do have it. So I have a what's sort of the beginnings of what you might consider a design document. It's more really just a high level outline of what we're going to be creating. So it's a 3D isometric action RPG is what we're creating. So it's going to be open world, but it's going to be sort of zoned off, right? So we're not going to have to worry about asset streaming or anything like that. It's just kind of a design decision that I made early on. And then, it'll have multiple endings based on actions or choices you make through the story. And we've got a whole bunch of sort of background and lore and world building that we've done here. And we also have a list of, mechanics that we want, the way inventory should work, progression, various, combat mechanics, items, that kind of stuff. So we've talked about a lot of this stuff on stream, even control schemes, and some of the engine features we're going to need. One of the thing that Sergeant Pepper there is referring to is something called the magical flying dingus mat, which is made from dingosaur skins. So dingosaurs are a type of dinosaur. The whole dingus thing is a bit of a inside joke in terms of the stream itself. We do what we call dingus-oriented programming on here. It's when I do something stupid on screen, and somebody usually catches it, or I catch it because it causes compilation errors, and they go, "Oh, that was stupid," and that's dingus-oriented programming in a nutshell. So, I said it once and it just kind of stuck, and so that's kind of where all that stuff comes from. I was just looking through the docs. There's so many things. Nice work. Yeah, there's lots going on for sure. Let's see. Hi, how will you abstract, for example, your graphics backend, function pointers, and or preprocessor? Great question. So we've already actually done this. And so if we take a look at the project structure, so we are looking at this project from the perspective of a application that's going to consume the engine, right? So the game is called Shadows of Illumina. I've just named the project Illumina. And from there, we have some libraries here, and then we have Git submodules. One of those is Kohi, which is the engine itself. And so when we talk about the renderer, we have Kohi core, which is kind of like our string libraries, our memory management, our super low stuff, containers, debug stuff, math library, our parsers, our platform layer, things like that. And then we have the runtime. The runtime is actually what contains the renderer, right? And the renderer is broken into two halves. So there's a renderer front end, which is graphics API agnostic. So it doesn't know or care what graphics API we are using under the hood, and it is what interacts with the rest of the engine. So the rest of the engine only ever talks to the renderer front end. Then we have the renderer backend, which is actually implemented via our plugin system. So in this case, you'll notice here that there's a Kohi plugin renderer Vulkan. So this is a renderer type plugin. It is for Vulkan. And this is where all the Vulkan specific logic lives. So this essentially implements what you might call an interface in C++, right? So we essentially have function pointers that get filled out by the plugin that are loaded automatically when the plugin is loaded. And the front end basically just calls those function pointers and just passes through all the data, and then it passes back whatever it needs. And so we have this sort of generic interface that we can use to communicate between those two. And so whenever we go to implement DirectX or Metal's probably going to be the next one we do, we'll have a Kohi plugin renderer Metal, Kohi plugin renderer Direct3D. And that's essentially how we are, that's how we're doing it. It keeps us from having to do a bunch of preprocessor hacking, which we do some preprocessor hacking with the platform layer stuff. But we do it that way for the renderer, and then we also have audio plugins, right? So the audio system works the same way. We have a front end and we have a back end. And the back end, in this case, that we've chosen to use is OpenAL. There will be other ones like Fmod and other sound libraries out there that we might want to use. But for now, we just opted to use OpenAL because it made the most sense. And so it's kind of the same concept between the audio and the renderer. So I hope that makes sense. Let's see. Your naming scheme is asking for KDE to become your sponsor. I actually don't know. I've never actually looked at KDE's code, to be honest. And the irony of that is I'm actually using KDE at the moment. But yeah, that's actually kind of funny if that's the way that they do their stuff. All right. So, what we were in the middle of looking at was the sort of redux on scene type assets, right? So we've done a lot of other asset types in here, and now we want to handle scenes. Now, this is going to be a little bit of a temporary thing that we're going to be doing, because scenes actually are going to get hoisted out of the core runtime and are going to be implemented instead in the game code, which is something we've talked about in previous streams. But just as a review, right now we have this concept of scenes in the engine, but we're going to be taking that out of the engine, and we are going to say, you know what? The application really should be the one to handle that. Why, you might ask? That's because the application knows what types of things it needs to have in the scene, right? So one thing we want to avoid is being over generic with stuff and saying, well, let's just implement an interface for this and let the end user solve that problem, right? We want to actually be able to reason about the data that we're going to be using. And so we want to get away from being super generic about stuff like that, right? And so the first iteration of scenes is pretty generic, but not quite where we would want it, right? And so I've been doing a lot of thinking about this, and I'm like, you know what? The concept of a scene doesn't necessarily make sense for the engine, right? This is something very much that we could add into our game system or our game code, so that we can focus on only the types that we need and nothing that we don't. And then the scene can essentially be responsible for aggregating all the data that we need to pass through the renderer or the audio manager or whatever. And so for now, since we are in the middle of a refactor having to do with assets, I'm going to refactor scenes to exist as they do now. And once we actually go through and finish with this and finish with all the resource changes that we're going to need to make, then I'm going to go back and actually extract scenes out of here, and we're going to move that to the game code. So this one's a little bit different, but for now we're going to just go ahead and do this in place. So we have, let's see, I was thinking earlier, like a lot of our assets have a asynchronous and a synchronous version of their functions to load. And the reason is because some assets will take longer to load than others. Image assets, for example, can take a while to bring in from disk, or a huge static mesh or a terrain or something like that might take a minute to read in from disk. I feel like scenes are probably something that really ought to be synchronous. because as I was mentioning before, this isn't the actual loading of a scene. This is the loading of a file, which is a configuration to load a scene. And so that is going to be basically just a KSON file. It's going to look like this, right? So this is our own storage format that we've kind of made. Looks a lot like JSON. We call it KSON. Go figure. But this is essentially all it is, right? And we're going to be changing the format of this once we actually move this, because there are some enhancements I want to make to this format. But that is essentially what a scene asset is, right? It's the configuration for a scene. It's not actually loading the scene itself. So generally speaking, when you're going to be, and this is one of those examples of like, we only should program what we actually need and nothing that we don't. So when we start thinking about, how are we actually going to use a scene, right? Usually when you say, I want to load a scene, that's going to be in a sequence of events that you've done, maybe fade out the screen to black or something like that. Maybe show a loading screen or something, right? And you're going to kick that off in a very linear sequence of events. And so you're not going to want to say, well, I want to load this scene, but maybe in an asynchronous way and just wait for it to come back. And then when it comes back, then we can, that doesn't make any sense, right? So for a lot of assets, it does. But I think for scenes, it does not make sense. So I think all we really need to do is I think we can just get away with just using the synchronous versions of all of these, right? So I think we can get rid of the asynchronous load version here, right? We just kind of copied that from something else anyways. And that means that we actually don't need this context and we don't need the callback, right? So all we're actually going to need here is, and this one, right? So we just have one function to load a scene synchronously and one function to load a scene from a specific package synchronously. And you could even argue that you probably don't even need this, right? Because it's probably going to be with the gameplay code, right? But again, we're going to be extracting this out, this asset type out to the engine anyways, or to the game code from the engine. So I'm not really too overly concerned with how that's going to work. Essentially what we need to do, the process here, is we are going to use the package sync under the hood for the default request, which basically says request this just from the application package. So all this does is just sort of hard codes this guy, and it just provides a little bit of a simpler API that we can request if we want to load it directly from the game package so that we don't have to do this. All of our assets work the same way. So this guy just forwards to that one, and so this one is where we need to actually fill up our stuff. And then as far as asset system release scene goes, that is where we actually destroy this stuff. So what we have here on the right side is what is our current asset handler. This is what we're getting rid of, right? So we don't want to have these sort of asset handlers that exist. We just want everything to be straight up in here in our asset system. And as you can see, there's not actually that much code in this file. It's not even 1,000 lines of code yet, right? It'll probably grow to that, but it's not going to be huge. So, we don't need all this fanciness, right? We can actually do away with this and instead just keep it super simple in here. Screen celebration. I just saw that, actually. Thank you for the 40 bits. Appreciate that. It doesn't always, notify me, though, but I did happen to see it out of the corner of my eye. Okay, so what do we need to do here? So we need to make a request to the virtual file system, synchronously in this case. So we should just be able to use this as is. This is actually not a binary file, though, so it is a text file, so we need to address that. This watch for hot reload, we are actually not going to implement hot reloading yet. I want to get this working without hot reloading first, and then we'll go back after we figure everything out and figure out hot reloading at that point. Okay. So, this is using KAsset scene deserialize. So, that is actually, I pulled from this guy. So why is this bleating? Let's go to this. Okay, so why is this complaining? Out asset. Oh, because it wants file text, that's why. So instead of size and bytes, we want to just use text. Okay. So the important distinction there is our deserialize functions. If we're reading from a binary file, we need to send over the binary block of memory and how big that block is. If we are reading from a non-binary file, meaning a text file, then we just need to send the text. So that is the VFS at data that is requested here, right? So that's actually, I think that might actually be it for that. Let's see, what do we have? Why is this bleating here? Let's see, asset system, package name. Oh, I think this is because it doesn't exist in the header file yet. So I guess we can go ahead, let's go ahead and just actually get that. We'll get that in there. So all we need is just the header definition. So we'll just change the whole body of the function to just be a semicolon, right? And then we'll just add, whoops. We will export the tokens for all of these, and that should solve that. Yes, it does. All right, perfect. So the only thing that we need to worry about now is this asset system release scene. So you'll see over here in this asset handler, this is sort of the old code, that we have this destroy node, and then we have this release asset, right? So essentially what we want to do is we want to essentially take this code and take this function. Most of our assets don't require all of this, but this actually has a tree of nodes in it. And so this function here is actually recursive. So this destroys the provided scene config node, or scene node config rather, and it destroys its children along with it, right? So it works its way all the way down that tree automatically via recursion. So we will need both of those. Magat's Hub, how's it going? Good to see you. I hope all is well. If you think about it, Krita is a standalone project, but integrated into KDE's ecosystem. Kohi could theoretically share the same fate. I mean, maybe. If I wanted to maintain that package in the AUR, I suppose I could, right? You know, I suppose that's not out of the realm of possibility. I could make a package for it eventually. Yeah, I haven't thought about that at all, actually. Right now, it's literally you just clone the project and build it. But yeah, that could be an interesting way to distribute. I'm not opposed to it. Thank you for the follow. Welcome. Let's see. Would like to try Kohi, but could not because skill issue, could not compile. So I should have actually mentioned this in my overview. In fact, I think I might have actually mentioned it. Did I mention it on the README? I thought I had. I guess I mentioned everything else but this. So, one thing to keep in mind is that this is very early days for this engine, right? We have not created a game. We have not released a game for this. And so I would not consider this engine ready to actually make games with just yet. Now, it's fantastic as a resource, right? There's plenty you could pull out of it for that. And if you wanted to fork it and build a game with it, then great, right? But I haven't written any documentation for it on how to actually set up a project, because that's changing, right? The project's pretty volatile at this point because we are going through the first kind of creation of a game for it. We're not at the point where we can actually say, the workflow on this is good. We're constantly, sort of redoing that, right, or updating it. Let me see. Oh, raid. Another raid. Let me see. Mudbound Dragon, thank you so much for the raid. I appreciate that. Raiding with a party of 26. What did you get up to on stream? Definitely go follow Mudbound Dragon if you're not. Muddy was pulling his hair out over Lua. Ooh, that sounds fun and or terrible. Bit of Pico 8 again tonight. Mostly doing bug fixing and refactoring. Nice. Okay, yeah, we're actually kind of doing the same thing. We're doing a little bit of refactoring as well. So welcome, Raiders. I will give a much shorter intro because I actually just did this, but I will go through it again. So just for the anybody that's new here, I'll drop a link in chat. So we are making something called the Kohi game engine. It is essentially an engine made from scratch using C and Vulkan. And so I say Vulkan, at least right now, is our initial rendering backend. We have support for Metal and Direct 3D planned as well. It is a cross-platform engine available on Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. It is free and open source. So the code is available on GitHub and is Apache 2.0 licensed, which means if you want to use it, you are free to. Whether that means commercial or personal project does not matter. All that I ask is that you say you used it if you did. But it's free and open source, and it always will be. I'll never paywall anything having to do with the engine. It'll always be 100% free. This is designed as an educational resource. It's a way to build a game engine, not necessarily always the right way to build a game engine. It's just a way of doing it, right? And sometimes we get things right, sometimes we get things wrong, and we do a deep dive, especially when we get things wrong. And that's actually kind of what we're going over here at the moment. So we do stream to YouTube and Twitch. We've got a couple more links here on the website to our Discord server. It's got like 1,000 people on it. Another link to the GitHub and a link to the Patreon. That's totally optional. Like I said, I don't paywall anything. This is meant to be an educational series, and I believe that stuff should be free. So I'm not paywalling any of it. I don't have any sponsors aside from you guys. This stuff is completely optional. And so with that, we are making a 3D isometric action RPG using the engine called Shadows of Illumina. And it's basically going to be a open world, but sort of zoned, right? So you have one zone to the next that you kind of move between. But it encourages exploration, multiple endings based on actions and choices you've made. We've done a bunch of work in here about world setting and stuff. We've got 29 pages worth of documentation in here that we've created so far. As far as our plan, a little bit of lore, mechanics in terms of inventory, battle mechanics, items, resources, attributes, and skills, progression, different item types, armor, how magic works, and how that ties into the lore. A whole bunch of stuff, right? Control schemes. all that kind of stuff. The idea of how we're working here is we have built a game engine, right? And we're using that to create our first game. So it's very early days in the game engine. I would not suggest anybody use the engine directly yet. We haven't created or released a game with it. Once we've actually released this game, the engine will definitely be ready for development again, of other games against it. Probably even before then. But it is very early days. We have started actually writing game code, but we're at the point now where we are going to be doing a lot of going back and forth between engine and game code. And so we're in the engine code right now, and we're just eliminating some things that I found that were a little bit overcomplicated. And so we're actually simplifying some of our APIs and actually ripping out a bunch of code. And making things a little bit simpler to use from an API perspective. And that's what we're working on right now, specifically revolving around assets and their various types. All right, so I hope that makes sense. Let's see. Let me catch up on chat. Got a question. I'm currently trying to figure out some custom allocators and slab allocator, aka fixed size allocator. Seems simple enough. But how do you handle arbitrary sizes of allocations? Asking since you seem to have custom allocators. If not, my bad. Yeah, so we do have custom allocators. We only call malloc once, and that is basically to give us a huge freaking block of memory, right? And then we delve that up as needed. So our memory system uses what we call a dynamic allocator, which was kind of a crappy name for it, if I'm honest. But essentially what it uses, or what it strives to do, is to mimic what malloc gives us, but from that contiguous block of memory. And so whenever we allocate, let's see, do we have an example of that in here? I don't know that we do. Let me just see. I don't know that there's a... Yeah, here we go. So whenever we allocate memory, we call this k-allocate, right? Which is essentially designed to be as almost a drop-in replacement for malloc, with a couple differences. So we give a size, right? And we give a tag, right? So we have a series of all these different tags. And these are basically different types of allocations. Now, these tags don't necessarily mean anything as of yet, but I have plans for this, and there's a reason that these are important. So this just works like you might expect with malloc, right? It just returns a void pointer. And so what this does is it actually reaches into our memory system, which uses a dynamic allocator. That dynamic allocator actually has a free list that it maintains of free blocks of memory within that huge block of memory. And so we've actually written a free list, implementation, and that is used by the dynamic allocator, and that is the default method of allocation. So all of our k-allocate calls, this doesn't just pass to malloc, this actually uses our internal allocation routine, right? The other thing that we have is we have something called a linear allocator, and I've seen other names for this as well. But essentially what that is it also allocates a large block of memory. And what that does is that essentially whenever you allocate X number of bytes from it, it moves a pointer forward within that block of memory every time you allocate. So the advantage there is that it's lightning fast to actually get memory from that, right? So as our normal routines, require sort of going through the free list, which does involve a little bit of overhead, right? Just as malloc would. The difference here is with a linear allocator, it's just moving a pointer forward by that many bytes and then returning, a void pointer, which is basically just an offset into that memory. And so we use our linear allocator as what I call a frame allocator. So every frame that we're going through, wherever we have a frame-specific allocation that needs to happen, but at the end of the frame, we don't care what happens to that memory. Like if you need an array set up to process something or what have you, we use the linear allocator for that. And the advantage there is at the end of the frame, we just reset that pointer back to 0, and we can reuse that block of memory without having to zero it out or do any of that other slow stuff, right? We could just reset it and keep allocating from it. And so those are the two main types of allocators that we have. We also, I did kind of start playing around with a pool allocator, which is another allocator which basically you tell it the size of each individual element that you have, and you can request something out of that pool. Say you create a pool with 128 elements, you can request up to 128 blocks of memory out of that, and that tends to be much faster than using a free list, for example. So we have one of those as well, but all of those other allocators also allocate from this initial block of memory that kallocate uses with our dynamic allocator. So when we first start the engine up, we allocate a huge block of memory, and everything else we do within the engine comes from that block of memory. And so the reason that I have these tags here is because eventually what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to place by tag. I'm going to place those allocations together in their own separate internal pools within that large arena. We're essentially going to split that up into a bunch of different segments, and all of that will be configurable. And that way, allocations of the same tag type will be relatively contiguous in that block of memory. And so that is kind of the way that we are handling that. I hope that answers your question. Arenas, yeah, essentially. Did you say 25,000 pages? Yeah, I think I'm allocating I think it's 2 gigs at the moment. Seen it being handled with multiple slab allocators, 8, 16, 32, 64, etc. That seems wasteful for arbitrary allocations. Let's say 40 bytes. Yeah, so my dynamic allocator doesn't do all of that stuff. However, I should also mention, so this is just kind of what we use for just stuff that doesn't really matter, in terms of performance. But we also do have allocate aligned. And a lot of our Vulkan calls use this specifically. So this is what allows us to create an allocation of a specific size, but also be able to specify an alignment and a memory tag. And so, this is very useful because, as you may or may not know, a lot of Vulkan allocations for a lot of various resources for Vulkan require you to have an aligned block of memory. So you have to have some sort of way to specify that. We also have our own Vulkan allocator that points to this guy. So that's how all of that works. Let's see. Got a new laptop coming in and looking to learn how to code, wanting to do something fun and lucrative as well. Any tips? That's a loaded question. So that would, okay, so you're saying you're wanting to learn how to code. So I assume that means you have no experience coding before, correct? Because if that's the case, this stuff may not, stuff that's this quote unquote advanced, you may not want to start with this, right? But what I do tell a lot of people is the first thing you're probably going to want to do if you have no experience programming, go on YouTube and watch Harvard's CS50. Watch it all the way through, right? It's a fantastic introduction into it, right? And you'll learn a couple of languages, programming languages from that. One of the most important ones being C. And that is the one that I usually say people should at a very minimum start with. I think they do Lua, and I think they introduce you to SQL for databases and maybe JavaScript. I can't remember. But yeah, CS50 is super valuable, right? It gives you the basics. I always say start there if you're learning to program from scratch. And then once you are at a point where you are comfortable or at least somewhat understand how C works, in order to get a really good command of this language, what I tell everybody is write your own string processing library in C from scratch, not using any of the standard library stuff. Write it completely from scratch. Because when you do that, you will have most of what you'll need as far as the C language itself goes, and you'll have a command of the language that's decent enough that you'll be able to move on and to other concepts such as graphics programming. I always say C first, even in front of C++, and there's a couple reasons for that. C is a much simpler language than C++, and I know that seems a little bit weird, and some people will tell you opposite, right? Because C++ tries to hide a lot of stuff from you. C helps you understand how memory actually works, how the processor actually works. You could argue assembly, you could drop down into assembly and really, really understand that, right? But I think C is, of the high-level languages, C is probably the best one to start with because it makes you understand how that memory works and how working with memory should be done and how it works under the hood. Because when you move on from C to C++, C++ will make a lot more sense. And a lot of other languages will make a lot more sense if you have an understanding of C. So yeah, CS50, create a string engine, C first. Yeah, basically. Yep. C is going to be the first language you're really going to want to get good with. Because I promise you, if you start with C, learning any other language will be much, much easier. If you start with C++, I guarantee you you're going to get frustrated. Because C++ is extremely complicated, especially the newer versions of it. C is God's language, yeah. If we want to be real, we need to follow Carl Sagan's advice. In order to create an app from scratch, we must first invent the universe. Right? High-level web devs, questioning reality. Yeah, C is technically a high-level language. Right? And I know that seems bizarre, right? When you compare it to other languages like C# and Java and stuff like that, JavaScript, right? But C actually is a higher level language. Assembly is technically high level too. I consider that mid-level. But yeah, exactly. Thank you for the follow, by the way. I often find it funny when a JS dev learns about types and a bulb goes on. Imagine if you learned computing from the get-go, right? CPU specific does make it lower. Yes, that's true. Yeah. It's it's not what I would consider low level, but it's lower level. It's like mid to low level, I would say. Yeah, so I hope that helps. Imagine punch cards for graphics devs. Yeah, I know, right? So there is a bit of a challenge, and I'll bring this up since we're talking languages at the moment, and what you're talking about there. There is a challenge on the YouTube channel that if I hit 1 million subscribers, I will immediately drop what I'm doing and write a Vulkan renderer using assembly. Now, granted, I don't think that's ever going to happen, but deal's out there. I've mentioned it a bunch of times on the stream. There's YouTube shorts with it. So if I ever do hit a 1 million subscribers on YouTube, I will write a Vulkan renderer using assembly. Which, mind you, I understand assembly, and I've written some of it, but I've not written anything large from scratch ever in assembly, so that'll be interesting. Each will take the same amount of time to achieve. Yeah, you're probably correct on that. You can do it blindfolded with one hand. I don't know about all that. With no help from ChatGPT, of course. How would you start a string processing project? Like the general steps or concepts? Okay, so that's a good question too. So when I say a string processing library, I would say take a look at... let me pull it up real quick. Wait a minute. I think I want this one. Okay. So you don't have to necessarily do like 100% of this, right? But like if you go and look at C Sharp's language spec, right? And we talk about the string class that's in there. If you look at, ignore all this crap, right? Incidentally, this is why I say start with C, because holy crap, look at this declaration, right? That's C Sharp. But anyways, ignore that. Have a look at all of the methods, right? So cloning, comparing a string, and there's multiple versions of that, right? A bunch of versions of that. Using two strings, or using strings based off of an integer, or using, whatever. Concatenating strings. And again, there's lots of overloads in here. You don't necessarily have to do all of them, just one or the other, right? A couple of them. Whether a string contains a character, right? Whether a string contains another string. Taking a copy of a string, copying one string to the other. Let's see. What a string ends with, yes or no? Does it end with this character? Does it end with this string? All this kind of stuff. And this is a long list of stuff. So, like, by the time you go through and implement basically everything that is in here under methods, right? Because this is really what you're going to be messing with here, is that, right? By the time you're done with this, I guarantee you will have a strong command of the language. Guaranteed. All the metadata BS. So ignore all the metadata stuff, but like read through the descriptions of these, right? And try to understand what they should do and make them from there. Basically saying just recreating the string methods. Yep, exactly. But doing it with C strings, not any sort of object-oriented programming or string struct or any of that stuff. Do it with straight-up strings. So the const character array or just character array. No chat Jeopardy. Yes. Yeah. So that's the other thing. If you really want to learn and get good at programming, do not under any circumstances use AI of any kind. I guarantee you it will affect your ability to think, reason about the problem, and problem solve. Don't do it. Books. So, this is the book that I recommend because it is the one that I use to learn C. This book is somewhat ancient, right? But it is still a pretty decent book. So, this is Sam's Teach Yourself C in 24 hours, right? This has been a really good book, and I quite like it. But as I said, it's kind of aged, but like the concepts in here don't really change. So that's the book that I learned C from initially, just to kind of get the ball rolling. And again, I went and implemented a string library to learn the language. So I hope that helps. Let's see. Interesting. I've been trying to learn C++ and slowly and definitely been getting frustrated. So I think I'm at the part where I should probably step down to C. I would agree. Because C++ tries to do all kinds of things for you, and doesn't really do a great job of explaining why it's doing those things, right? So like in C, it'll have you do something like std cout, right? Oops, my formatter is getting me here, right? And then some string, right? And then std endline, right? Like this is what all of the tutorials out there tell you to do, right? This is terrible for a bunch of reasons, right? Because this is actually an operator overload that's making this operator do something that it normally does not do. And then, what is cout, right? What is this operator having to do? How is this string getting here? This prints a line to the console with an end line at the end of it, basically that says, continue on down to the next line in the console. And that's what this does, right? It does a little bit more than that, right? But it hides so much stuff from you that you're not really understanding what's going on. And like every intro to C++ shows you this, except they'll do some stupid, hello world, right? Oops. Minus the random vim keystrokes, right? So they'll have you do this. Like, this is a terrible place to start, right? It's much better. Like in C, it's I think they put this, right? To accomplish the same thing in C, it's that, right? And you don't have to worry about the concept of streaming, which I'm not even going to get into. But it's just, it starts you off in a much more sane place. And it teaches you about pointers and how pointers work under the hood, because C++ tries to get you away from using pointers, or tries to get you to use these managed pointers, or smart pointers, which, sure, they have their use, right? But like, if you don't understand what the heck a pointer is or what it's doing under the hood, how are you supposed to understand that? So yeah, I hope that helps. This is a laptop I ordered. Is this enough? I'll check it. I mean, if you ordered it, more than likely it's going to be enough, right? It does not have a dedicated GPU, but more than likely, I mean, these days a lot of these machines actually have like Vulkan drivers. So like, if you wanted to do graphics programming, you could probably do it on that and be okay. You're not going to be running any like super high-end games on it or anything, but like for basic programming stuff, yeah, that's totally fine. As Rugg said, even a Chromebook is enough to program on, right? Like, you don't need a super, super powerful machine to do this stuff. Only when you start getting into graphics processing, and advanced graphics processing, do you need that stuff. What version of C are you using? So I am currently using GNU C99. And that is because my dynamic array is using the type of GNU extension. But yeah, other than that, I'm using 99. Eventually, I want to get away from that, but for now, because of that one thing, I'm using GNU. Stream operators are evil and amazing at the same time. Yes, exactly. We have std print and std puts now. Yeah, okay. So tutorials didn't catch up yet. Yeah, so I have not touched. So the last serious C++ that I've written for any large scale program was C++ 11. And that is because especially like game development, they don't tend to kind of keep up with the most current versions of C++, because in a lot of cases, consoles and whatnot, or your various compilation targets aren't supporting that stuff yet. So when I was doing a lot of C++ before I switched to C, C++ 11 was still what everybody was using. So yeah. And to be honest, it's not really like all the new stuff in C++, most of it isn't particularly useful. Let's see. No dedicated GPU is that surely that isn't a deal breaker. Yeah, exactly. Like, so if you're just learning this stuff, like, you can usually use an integrated GPU on a laptop just fine to do basic graphics programming stuff. Is it going to be fast? Maybe not, but it'll work. If you're wanting to do, like, I will say, if you're going to run Unreal Engine or you're wanting to get into that, it ain't going to fly. So I'll just toss that out there. Where's the fear of pointers coming from? I would love to know that, right? Because C++ tries to steer you away from pointers like, oh, pointers are evil. And they're just not. They're just misunderstood. No game dev, I want to be super employable. Yeah, I mean, that's fair. If you get good with C, like I said, and then use that to springboard to other languages that you're looking to get jobs in, like, it'll make you it'll make that transition a lot easier, and it'll also make you a much better programmer going forward because you'll actually understand what is actually happening under the hood instead of just blindly writing JavaScript and not really understanding what's happening. Shots fired. Yeah. I mean, fair enough, though. It's not wrong. You can sort of work around the typo stuff, at least for the most part, when you're doing dynamic arrays. It's useful stuff, but very tiny cases. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, I haven't been motivated to actually just fix it. But said it again about Unreal. Unreal is very heavy. Can't run it on a toaster. Yeah. So Unreal is saying it's very heavy is an understatement, actually, I think. Unreal is like, it's gigantic. It takes like 45 minutes plus to compile in a fast machine. Maybe they fixed that recently. I haven't looked at it within the last year or so, but yeah, it takes forever to compile. And that's just compiling. That's not even running it, right? It's a big boy. To be fair, it does a lot, right? It does a hell of a lot, but it's gigantic. Some of C++ library features are questionable, and most of it you never touch, but a new language features are quite nice. Sadly, can't live without templates. So yeah, that's been my experience as well. Like I avoid the STL like the plague. Whenever I have to use C++, I avoid that. Because the way that it handles memory under the hood and all that stuff, you have no control over that, and just no. I tend to avoid templates also, because I have found working in C that there's very, very little use for templates. The only use that I've ever had for templates has basically been for typed dynamic arrays. And that would be the only thing that I would ever even think about using a template for if I were using C++. Is this book any good? C Programming, A Modern Approach, 2nd edition by K.N. King. Is that the... Wait. Hang on. Let me look that up and make sure that that's the one I'm thinking of, because it might not be. I don't know about that one. I've not read that one. I don't know who K.N. King is. It's not K and N, which is something different. That's why I was like, wait a minute, let me look this up. So I don't know. I can't speak to that one. I wonder if the bloats... on those engines are just trackers installed at the hood rather than the engine itself, or are they legit bad design? So, you'll hear people like Casey Muratori, Jonathan Blow to an extent. You'll hear a lot of these guys talk about OOP and why they don't like it. And Unreal is a classic example of that. Unreal is heavy, heavy, heavy OOP. And as a side effect of that, you get lots of memory fragmentation that slows things down. And it also scatters your code all over the place and makes things really hard to file. So yeah, it's it's really just, it's bloated, of course. They allow configurable code per instance, usually with macros. It's per library, so I'll take it. Fair enough. Thank you for the follows, by the way. Welcome. All right. Let's see. Jeet, I think, was that you on the Twitch side yeah, I think it was. I answered that question over there. Okay. Yeah, so I don't know about that book. Yeah. That was you. Okay. I thought so. I don't know about that book. I haven't read that one, so I can't speak to it. I can't say yay or nay. One of these days if I get time, haha. They are legit bad design. You need to remember these engines are leftovers from the 90s mindset. Also, they definitely track. Even if they have some shiny features, it's still Stone Age mindset. So, yes. So, a lot of these still have a heavy inheritance model, which was the way to do things in the 90s and early 2000s. Before data-oriented programming had really kicked in, or any of that stuff. Everybody was, very, very heavy oops. So you might have, for an example of what we're talking about, you might have, like I think Unreal has like a U object, right? And then they have an actor, and then from that they have a static mesh actor, and then they have, you know, you can inherit from there. And I think there's like 6 other layers in between there. And so yeah, that's kind of the old school way of doing things, because it allowed them to sort of inherit logic from these base classes. But the problem with that is if you have the need to get you know, separate things from separate base classes, then you're doing multiple inheritance, which can cause problems. And multiple inheritance is generally a no-no, and there are many reasons for that. And so yeah, that's generally just tends to kind of be a rabbit hole. And so now it's like these days people tend to favor composition over inheritance. One last question. Do you recommend any other books other than Sam's Teach Yourself Seed? Let's see. Do I have, for C specifically? I don't think I have any other C books, to be completely honest. There is... let me see if I can find a link to it. There is. I just have to find it on the Jungle website. There is a K&R programming book that is really good. I just can't remember the actual name of the book itself, but a lot of people recommend it. I read it back in the day. I just don't have it anymore. What is it? What the heck is the name of it? Yeah, K&R is a good one. I also do see like in a Reddit post that people are recommending that book by K&, King. So maybe that's a good one. I just can't speak to it. The C programming language, that was it. Yeah, I think that's it. Let's see. First time chatter, Wugsaw, welcome. First time catching live, just wanted to say your Game Engine series, that scrolled. Game Engine series inspired me to do my own projects instead of hoping class projects were enough. Just landed my first internship and wanted to say thanks for the inspiration and teaching all this stuff. You're the GOAT. Dude, that is awesome. That right there is the reason I do this stuff. Thank you so much for that. That means a lot to me that you mentioned that and you came on here and to tell me that. So first off, thank you for that. Thank you for being here. Thank you for following along. And thank you for telling me that. But that right there is the reason I'm doing this stuff, because I'm hoping to inspire people to go and do stuff like that. That is freaking awesome. Congratulations on that. That's huge. That is absolutely huge. That right there is the kind of stuff I'm hoping to inspire. You just made my week. Not even gonna lie. Hearing stuff like that makes all of the effort that I'm doing here worth it. And I know I'm just kind of doing this for right now, but like all this stuff that we're working on, it makes it worth it. So thank you for that. That's huge. Isn't that dated? Probably, but I mean, this is dated too, right? But like, again, C doesn't really change all that much. C programming language is the one I have. 100% recommend it. Yeah, I've read it in the past too. Thank you for the follows, by the way. C is too advanced. You should downgrade to the OGB programming language. Oh, God. Magetz, why do you want to watch the world burn? Yeah, Wugsaw, that's super awesome, though, man. I'm really, really happy for you. And I'm really happy to hear that. Let's create the next thing, E++. That probably exists, right? What I might do if we hit, maybe we should come up with some sort of goal, right? Where we actually go through making a programming language, right? And maybe we'll call it the Dingus programming language or something. Like maybe we should actually come up with like a target to say if I hit a certain number, it needs to be a large target though. Then maybe we'll do it, right? So instead of E++, we'll say, Dingus++ or just Dingus programming language. D already exists, so I can't use that. Kohi scripting coming along. Yeah. I mean, we could make a scripting language for Kohi, right? But I'm trying to avoid that. We don't name programming languages with single letters anymore. Dingus programming language sounds better. Yeah, I agree. Dingus programming language, I think, is or just the Dingus language. Dingus lang. Just Dingus lang. Right? Could register a domain for that and everything. Dingus lang, right? Maybe that's what we'll call it. Dingalang? No, that sounds like something different. Max, over there on YouTube, how are you doing? Good to see you. You watched the post-mortem stream. Awesome. So that's kind of what we're in the middle of now. We're just kind of chatting at the moment. But yeah, we're reworking our asset system now. Good to see you, by the way. It's been a minute. I'm sure you've been busy. But it's great to see you over there on the YouTube side. Ding++. Yeah, I think Dingus lang works, right? So let's come up with a goal for this. So we already have the deal in place. Like if my YouTube channel hits 1 million subscribers, that I will stop what I'm doing and write a Vulkan renderer in assembly. We already have that. So that goal already exists. Let's see. I wonder what would be the target for us, like writing our own programming language? Would it be 2 million? What was the last recommended book mentioned? I heard K and K. Was it K and King or? Yeah, so K and King I'm reading as a decent book but for some reviews people are saying it's a good book. I have not read it though. I've read K and R. But I've heard that the K and King book is apparently pretty good. I probably should pick it up and read it just so I can tell. I was placing some bets where Windows 12 would be written in C#. If Windows 12 is written in C#, it will be unusable. Microsoft will be selling expensive, powerful hardware to run Office. I mean, it already takes, 10, 15 seconds to launch Word on a fast processor? You should write the parser with hex codes. Oof. Windows is already unusable. Yeah, I mean, there's a reason I'm on Arch for these streams, right? The only time I log onto Windows is if I have to do something for Windows support for this engine, or I do it by accident. I never log into Windows but on purpose. Let's see. Nathan is asking over on the YouTube side, if you're taking a look at C23, specifically N3037 being added. I don't know what N3037 is, but I know C23 is going to have, was it constant expression equivalent or something like that, which actually might be a reason for me to want to upgrade. Like that would be something I would maybe upgrade for, but like, I don't know. I haven't really decided yet. I don't know if some of the targets I'm planning on supporting support that either, is part of the problem. Free time has been tight. Been working on spotlights lately. Got texture projectors working. Feels good. Awesome. Those are 2 things I need to put in the engine actually at some point. So that's really cool. Good progress. Yeah. Nice. Even Microsoft isn't that stupid. They are different departments. New utilities and programs are probably C#. That, yes. But like OS, like low-level code? Absolutely not. Using Arch natively? Yeah, this is on Arch. My machine name is down here, Arch, by the way. Yep. For the memes, but also because I prefer Arch. I've tried a lot of different distros, and Arch is kind of where I'm at the moment. I've been using it for the last 3-4 years. They know if performance difference becomes too big, they will lose a lot of people. So the problem is they haven't, though, because Windows keeps getting more bloated and more slow and more crappy, and people still keep using it because they don't think there's some other choice. So, yeah, what is the threshold for that, right? People tend to get really impatient when waiting for a web page to load, but like their operating system, I mean, it used to be like back in the Windows 95 days, you hit the power button and you walked away to go get a coffee or something, come back 5 minutes later and it's booted. Thankfully, we're not back there, but like operating systems are nowhere near as fast as they should be. Let's see. I am Klops, first-time chatter, welcome. Any opinions on AI? Current GPT is what I mean. Sorry if it's already been asked. So I'll give a quick opinion on this. I don't want to dive into it too much, but I have yet to actually be able to find code that was written by an AI that I would ever use in production, ever. AI does not have the context that is required for anything beyond basic boilerplate functions. And all this vibe coding stuff you see is just rife with things like memory leaks, security holes, stuff like that. So I would never actually recommend to use it for that reason alone. There's also other reasons, and I say this consistently to people who are thinking about starting programming or are very new at programming, that touching AI is the absolute worst thing that you could do for your career, hands down, because it detracts from your critical thinking skills, because you just go, I'll ask ChatGPT, and your critical thinking and your problem solving skills both go down the drain. Because you're not working those things out. You're not trying to reason about the problem. You're not trying to reason about the data or the thing that you're trying to solve. You're just foisting that off onto an AI, and maybe it'll get it correct. Maybe it won't, but you're not actually learning how that stuff works and how to think through that problem critically to actually solve it, which is going to make you a better problem solver the more you do that to solve other issues, right? So I still say stay away from it. That's my opinion on that. Wrote my own elf parser and did linker to get shared objects loaded in. Could have continued with the madness, but then I just ended up loading in the rest of the symbols with DL open DL sim. Yeah, exactly. That's the way I would do it too, to be honest. I get it. They're about to lose gamers too. I'm dead serious. Yeah, I mean, so on that, Valve has pushed really hard in the last 5 years or so, 5-10 years, and made Linux gaming way, way, way more powerful than it used to be. There's been huge improvements in Wine, Proton, Lutris, all of those things. And I could actually run Final Fantasy XIV on my Linux install faster than it runs on my Windows install, which makes no sense given that it goes through DirectX VK, which is translating stuff under the hood, but it still runs faster. Help me understand that, right? So yeah, I mean, I would love to see Linux get more gaming love, and that's one of the reasons I support this platform. And actually, for this engine, Linux is a first-class citizen. It's not just, we're porting to it, right? It's, if anything, I'm porting to Windows. But yeah, it's come a long way. AI is a great accessibility tool. I don't have a need for it, but my dad loves it. I could see that. So there are some things I could see it being good for. It's just when it comes to the programming realm, maybe not so much. Maybe also, though, like explaining something at a high level and how that works and like breaking down or summarizing something, maybe that would be okay. But I would never actually use it for code. Creative people, maybe not that soon, but plain gamers, it's getting close. Yeah. So, I mean, I very rarely have a reason to ever switch to Windows. That's just the way it goes for me, right? Something open source which performs like Mac OS and feels like Windows would make a great OS. So I know a lot of people like to hate on Mac OS. I actually like Mac OS. It's my second favorite operating system behind Linux. And then Windows is number three. So Mac is actually powering the stream right now, right? So the Mac that I got to port this engine to is actually what I use as the streaming machine. And I do that so that if the drivers on this machine fail, which happens sometimes, because Vulkan, it doesn't take down the whole stream. But I do quite a lot of programming on Mac as well, and it's actually it's decent, right? You gotta get in there and make a bunch of adjustments to make it that way, but I certainly don't have as much hate for it as I do Windows. Games and Linux systems have a toxic relationship at the time. Once it's solved, people will be migrating fast. I tend to kind of agree with that. What most people don't want to deal with, most people don't want to troubleshoot their system, right? They just want to boot it up, start the game, or install the game and have it work, right? And Linux is not necessarily always that way. If you get plus 50% performance, you can overlook that. No? Well, I would say if it works and you get that, yes. But the problem is a lot of people have issues getting things to work on Linux because they don't want to take the time to learn it. It's not for everybody, right? I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think it's, I'm not going to stand here and be like, lol, skill issues or, you suck or whatever. Like I'm not going to do that. It's not for everybody. Probably because Linux is not mining your data in the background for advertising. Yeah, no kidding. MDS Ubuntu, how's it going? 3-stream streak, awesome. Appreciate that. Get good, yeah, right. Mac OS gets too much hate from people who don't use it. Yes, I agree with that, 100%. It's very hard to get Mac OS to panic. Yeah. In fact, this Mac that I have here, which I got in, was it 2022 or 2021? One or the other. It's not panicked once. I've not had one kernel panic. Not once. And I use the crap out of it. So I can't say that about Windows with blue screens. So let's see. Learning programming is difficult enough with some AI bot causing you 100x more problems as a learner. Just get a good book on C and an idea for a program to write. Yep. And that's why I usually suggest a string library, right? Because that's an easy thing that, conceptually that people can work on, and it's a sizable enough project to learn the language. N3037 is basically that structs that look the same are the same, so you can define an anonymous dynamic array type using a macro. Dynamic array, parentheses, type everywhere. I'll have to look into that. I hadn't read that. Admittedly, I just kind of gave a cursory glance to the C23 spec because I wasn't actually looking into it. But yeah, I'll have to look into that. I've got it pulled up here on a separate page. So I could see how that would be useful. But again, I don't know that that would be enough to actually get me to move over, right? Because again, I don't know if the targets that I plan on supporting in the future are actually going to be able to support that or not. One of those targets is Xbox, right? So if I can't compile Xbox, I'm not going to use that. Also, iOS and Android are going to be in the future. And I'm hoping eventually PlayStation, but that's probably way down the road. And Switch, probably Switch 2. So I'm thinking with those platforms in mind that I eventually want to port to, probably not. I would guarantee at least one of them doesn't support C23 by the time I get there. Let's see. For online gaming, it's going to be restrictive. I don't think people can play League on Linux due to Vanguard. Yeah. So the anti-cheat stuff is definitely something to consider. But I mean, any of that stuff can be hacked too. So some distros really hold your hand like a child too. Probably people get lost in distro choosing. That's a thing, right? So like if somebody's brand new to Linux, I say use Ubuntu or use Mint. Is usually what I say there. Don't start with something like Arch. Use Linux for a year or so, get familiar with how it works, and then if you want to move to a different distro that's a little bit more advanced, maybe do a little research and do that. And I say, if you're distro hopping, the single best way that you can do it is install it in a VM. Because then if you don't like it or you screw it up, you just blow it away and start over. We should filter all the Linux forum info into the language model to solve Linux issues. Linux AI, right? Although not playing League is great, I tend to agree. People just like their online games. Yeah, and so that's a big thing, right? That is definitely a big thing because a lot of these online games require anti-cheat. Kernel level anti-cheat at that. So that's a hard thing to bypass. Unless it's written specifically for the platform. Let's see, not now, but if there's customers, there will be product. Maybe it won't be League, but someone will do it. That's true. Yep. I think coding with LLMs as a newbie is as absurd as the scene in Matrix where Neo is uploaded with the Kung Fu information. Sure, you have all the information in your hand, but you're lacking muscle memory. Yep. Exactly. You're not working those problem-solving muscles. You're not reasoning about the problem and learning how to reason about the problem. Since I'm a single player, Andy, my transition will be smooth. Still need to do some desire upgrades to my systems to get rid of all this crap. Yeah. Probably live service gaming is carrying Windows at the time. Live service gaming. Yes. For gaming, yeah, I would agree with that. Well, and a lot of game companies tend to write directly to, using the Windows API and DirectX and stuff like that when they port to PC because they consider Windows to be PC. Emulation has come a long way, but some of those things still don't work 100% if you try to emulate them on a different OS. Worst case, buy a Steam Deck or something. These handholds are really getting powerful. Probably you can just plug a monitor and start playing. Yep, that's true too. It's a godsend product. Yeah, I'm hoping to get one of those eventually. I just don't have the fundage to do it currently, right? That is another system I plan on targeting, though, is the Steam Deck. Switch from Thunar file manager to Dolphin. I finally figured out what is taking a huge chunk of my root drive storage, and it was a cache folder under up. Nice. Steam Deck is very nice. Nice. Yeah, I've heard really good things about it. I just don't have one. PlayStation 5 or PlayStation 1? So it'd be PS5. Yeah, I wouldn't bother supporting anything older. If I were doing PlayStation 1 stuff, that's a whole other beast, for sure. I know there's people on YouTube that have done it. But yeah. This engine, as it is right now, would already be too big to run on the PS1. Guaranteed. And that's just the code, right? That's not taking into account assets or any of that stuff. That's just the code. Chat doing its job to avoid Travis to get to work gone. Yeah. Should let the man work. Nah, it's fine. I like talking with you guys, right? This is my favorite part of the stream. I like, chatting back and forth with you guys. And like I said, I did get a bunch of stuff done off stream too. In fact, here is this. I did all this off stream, right? So we've done some work off stream for sure. All right. should I even... Oh, thank you for the follow, by the way. Appreciate that. Okay, so let's see. We know about these errors. Essentially, what we're going to do is we are going to remove all of these handlers out of the system once we've converted everything. Now, I think we might have actually done all of these except scene. Scene is the last one we're on. And the hot reload callbacks register, we can actually get, you know what? I'm going to get rid of these. Let's get rid of that. We don't need that stuff anymore. And we can actually remove the asset loaders shortly as well. So we were talking about releasing the scene asset, right? So let me actually I'm going to take, we needed to release description and the nodes, right? So I'm going to take this and put this here. And then typed, we just need assets, right? So we don't need typed asset anymore. And we just need this free. And actually all the zeroing out that we're doing, we don't need to actually do anymore. Because we free that memory right here, so it doesn't matter. Then this one is that. Okay. Now, we don't have the destroy node. We're going to have to rename that to, let's say, asset or k-asset scene destroy node, right? That's what we'll call that. And then I'm actually going to take this guy here, and we're going to paste that right here above that, because that's the only place it's actually used. Scene destroy node, right? And that is static, right? So that should be fine. And then that's the recursion right there. And we are good as far as releasing. So that is going to do it for the asset handler for scenes, right? Now we need to handle the resource handler. For a scene, and I think this one. Oh, there's a lot of annoying copying that happens here. So this is one of the reasons I want to get rid of the K-resource stuff, right? Because we're actually taking like second copies of all this stuff onto a second layer, which really doesn't matter. So I guess we could try to... Oh, you know what? Let me do one more thing. Did I copy this to the header? Yes, I did. Okay. All right. So I guess we could see if we could try to just get this file to work for now, and then we can worry about the details later on, right? We could just hook this up to our asset request, or replace the asset system request with the new asset system function, right? So we have k-asset scene, right? And we're just going to call this asset, and this is going to be we'll do asset system acquire, or was it? Why do we only have the... This is what I want right here. All right, so for this, we're going to use self asset system for the pointer to the asset system's state. And then we need the package name, which is going to be, we need to actually rename this to asset info. So we need to say here, asset info, package name, asset info, asset name. I think those have got to be wrapped in a kname string get for both of those. Whoops. Forgot the G. Whoops. How did I screw that up so badly? Dingus-oriented programming at its finest. All right. So this line replaces all this crap here. So this can now go away. All right. Actually, before we do that, I do need to change. Oh, you know what? We don't want to do... Yeah, we did say we were going to do the synchronicity. Okay. We do want to take this and just put that here for a second so we don't lose it. We're going to come back to that, but we can remove all of that, right? And the request. And so what we will do is we shall go to the definition of this guy. And we no longer need this asset request result. We just need the listener instance, which actually has to be first in our case. So we just swap those around. And then actually do that. All right. And we will call this basically passing on the listener instance and the asset. Right? And this is actually going to need to be, we just have the sort of generic k-asset there. This needs to be k-asset scene. And this needs to be k-asset scene. Whoops. Okay. And actually, I think we can get rid of that function call altogether. Let's actually just do that. Because we have this asset to resource thing, which I think also only gets called once. Yeah. So what we should really do is, like, since all of this is synchronous, we don't actually need these as callbacks anymore. We could actually just move the logic that is in these to where we actually need to execute it, right? So let's take this, and I'm actually going to go to request right here when we're actually making this call. Put this here. We don't need the listener anymore. We don't need to check the results, right? We can say if we have asset, then we should do something to it, right? So if we do have that, we want to go ahead and process it. If we don't have that, then we have an error. We can't return false there, but we can destroy the listener, right? So we have listener inst here. I wonder if we can just, if my LSP will allow that. Yes, okay. So we have listener there, and then we have this asset to resource, right? So if we go to this, then we have, thank you for the follow, by the way. If we do that, then all we have to actually do is take what is in that function and put it here, right? So we can say, let's see, out scene resource is just a pointer to the resource. So what was that actually? Listener typed resource. Okay. So we can say listener typed resource. Listener typed resource. Listener typed resource. And listener typed resource. Copy scene node is actually static, but I don't think we forward declared it. So that is why that is bleating. Let's just go ahead and let's resolve that. So let's actually get rid of these two because we don't need those anymore. And we can get rid of this one and take this up here to the top. Then we'll just forward declare that. And then we also had this guy that we can get rid of. And I believe that is all of the errors in this file. So the scene serializer. Oh, you know what? I did change some stuff in there. So we did change this at the header. What did we miss in the C file? I guess it must have been in the middle of this. We no longer have a base meta version. It's just... I thought we had version in there. Did we not? No version in asset scene. Okay. How do I want to... I think I'm just going to disable this for now. Because we're going to move this anyways, so I don't really care all that much. Actually, let's do that. Okay. What's the warning that we have? Passing K-asset scene. Parameter type of K-asset. Oh, yep, we are actually doing that. Okay. So deserialize node. This is taking just a K-asset in both of those, which means these are doing that as well. Okay. Now we have errors. But why? Aha. More versioning stuff. Okay. I suppose we ought to have... Maybe I ought to put version in here. Maybe I should do that really quickly. Yeah, let's support it. I'm going to wind up moving it anyways, but let's just go ahead and support it. It's fine. So we have, let's see. I think we're going to do a U32 version for this guy. So instead of under meta, that's just version itself under the core assets. So that's all that was, is just eliminating those. And then I could actually undo this and put this back. Oops, what did I miss? Oh, there's one more here. Okay, did I get everything? I think so. Okay, so we've now moved on to the last type of resource. I forgot that we hadn't done shaders yet, but that's not a huge deal. So we will pick that up on the next stream. Let me go ahead and catch up on chat before we close the stream for the night. Let's see. Remembered a few more reasons why I'm not writing C. 1, templates, as said earlier. 2, namespaces. 3, modules as compilation method. 4, reflection. Hopefully we'll get it soon. So the only one of those that I would be interested in would be reflection. And that's very, very, very limited. But Yeah. Templates, like I said, I don't really use them. Namespaces, I don't use them either. Modules, nope. But yeah, reflection I could see being handy. It's hard migrating your mind from point A to point B. I've been working on using Java Python for almost 5 years. Dealing with pointers was really painful at the beginning. Had to learn to embrace it. Did a bunch of exercises, doing little file handlers, and studied DSA and C. Best decision I've taken on my career for sure. Yes, it helps you understand so many things under the hood that you would not have understood otherwise. And it really gives you an insight into how those higher level languages work. Started with C, and I'm not bought into smart pointers and OOP everything. I agree with you on that. So it's not quite the same thing. Those are literally some features that doesn't exist in C and can't be replicated. Not easily anyway, yeah. Like the automatic of this pointer and stuff like that, yep. Also, lambdas, they can significantly reduce complexity repeat. I have mixed feelings on lambdas. I don't usually like them all that much. I find it makes the code a little bit harder to read, personally. And it kind of also makes the flow a little bit harder to understand because of when it actually gets invoked. I would much rather use a function pointer if I'm doing that, but that's just me. Maybe that's me being a boomer. I don't know. All right. So with that, I'm going to pick somebody to raid. I just want to say thank you guys so much for all the interactivity tonight. It's been a lot of fun. I really appreciate you guys being here, and we'll be back tomorrow night for another stream. So yeah, if you haven't already, I would really appreciate a follow either on the Twitch side or the YouTube side, or both if you're so inclined. Yeah, let me see. Well, sometimes you really got to use. Well, really want to wait. Man, my dyslexia kicked in hard there. Okay, let me try that again. Sometimes you really want to use a function, but not liter global namespace. That's when I would do it in a C file, so it's local to that compilation unit. But yeah, that's just me. They can hold data unlike function pointers. True. Yeah. All right. Oh, I actually think I know who I'm going to raid because of their go live notification, I think. Let me just make sure that there's not something else, but I don't think there is. I think yeah, okay. One moment. So we are going to raid Reinart. He is making a game in C++ from scratch, so he's not using an engine. But he's also doing all the assets himself. He's making a game called Woods of War. It looks really good. It looks like he's just starting his stream, so definitely give him a warm welcome, and yeah, ask him what he's up to, and I'll see you guys over there. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you guys on the next one. See ya.